My name is Cora Townsend, and I was 18 years old when I found out my parents had drained every single dollar of my $224,000 college fund to pay for my brother's destination wedding in Tuscany. A wedding I was told the venue covered. 3 weeks before my first semester at the University of Michigan, I opened a bank statement that read $0 and zero. When I asked my mom and dad for an explanation, my father looked me in the eye and said, "Ryan needed a strong start to his marriage." My mother added, "You can't take loans like everyone else." My entire extended family called me materialistic for being upset, so I made one phone call, just one, to my grandparents. And what they uncovered didn't just get me back into college. It tore my parents' marriage apart. Before we get into this, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps. And drop a comment. Where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now let me take you back to the summer before everything changed. I grew up in Shelby Township, Michigan, a suburb north of Detroit, where lawns are trimmed on Saturdays and everybody waves from the driveway. My dad, Greg, managed a branch of a regional insurance company. My mom, Diane, sold real estate part-time and hosted neighborhood potlucks like it was a competitive sport. My brother Ryan was 8 years older, 26 that summer, working sales at a car dealership off Van DJKE Avenue. From the outside, we were the Townsends. Nice family, nice house, 2 kids, 1 dog, a boat in the side yard. From Thane's side, there was Ryan's side of the family. And then there was mine. It wasn't obvious at first. Little things. Ryan got a new bike at 13. I got his old one resprayed. Ryan crashed his Honda junior year. Dad replaced it within a week. I needed a laptop for AP classes sophomore year, and Mom told me to use Ryan's old desktop. "It still works fine," she said. The fan sounded like a leaf blower, but sure, it worked fine. I didn't resent it, honestly. I figured that's how families operated. The older kid costs more because they hit milestones first. Ryan needed a car for work. Ryan needed a suit for prom. Ryan needed spending money at Central Michigan before he dropped out after 2 years. I adjusted. I found free SAT prep courses online. I applied for every scholarship listing in the school library. I picked up a part-time job at a bookstore called Birch and Bauer the summer I turned 16, shelving paperbacks for $9.50 an hour. I was the kid who didn't ask for much. And in my family, that made me the kid who didn't get much. But there was one thing I believed was untouchable. One thing I'd been promised since before I could remember. My grandfather, Harold Townsend, retired CPA, opened a 529 education savings plan the day after I was born. He and my grandmother, Ruth, drove down from Traverse City, 3 hours each way, with a card that read, "Welcome to the world, Cora. Your launch pad starts today." He put in $50,000. Every birthday after that, Grandpa Harold would hand me a card at dinner. Inside the same message in his careful accountant's handwriting, 1 year closer to your launch pad, and every year he added to the fund. Sometimes 5,000, sometimes more. The market did the rest. By the time I was 17, that fund had grown to $224,000. I knew the number because Grandpa told me. Not to brag, he wasn't that kind of man. He told me so I could plan. "Know your runway, kiddo," he'd say. "Then pick the landing strip." So I picked the University of Michigan, in state tuition, top 20 public school, pre-law track. I turned down partial scholarships at 2 other universities because I didn't need them. I had the fund. I had the plan. When I told my parents I'd committed to Michigan, Dad smiled and said, "Good school." Mom said, "We're proud of you." Neither of them mentioned the fund, but they didn't need to. It had been the quiet understanding my whole life. Grandpa's money was waiting, earmarked for exactly this. Twice during senior year, I'd casually asked Dad about it. Both times, same answer. "It's all set, don't worry about it." What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until June, was that my father had been added as an authorized signer on that account when I was 3 years old. A small administrative detail, a convenience, the kind of convenience that costs $250,000. In March of that year, Ryan announced he was getting married. His girlfriend, Megan, 25, blonde highlights, very specific opinions about table linens, had always dreamed of a destination wedding, not Cancun, not the Outer Banks. Tuscany, a hilltop villa with olive trees and string lights and 120 guests flown in from Michigan. I'd looked up Tuscany weddings once just out of curiosity. The numbers started at 60,000 and climbed fast. How are you guys affording that? I asked at dinner one night. Dad didn't look up from his plate. The venue has a package deal. Ryan and Megan worked it out. Mom added, "Don't worry about your brother's finances, Cora." So I didn't. But I noticed things, the little shifts. Wes stopped eating out. Dad canceled his fishing magazine subscription. Mom sold 3 designer handbags online, bags she'd kept in dust covers for years. When I mentioned it, she waved her hand, just being smart with money. The wedding happened Memorial Day weekend. 120 guests in a rented villa overlooking the Chianti Hills. White roses, live string quartet, a 7-course dinner with wine pairings. I was a bridesmaid, bought my own dress, booked my own flight on the bookstore job savings. At the reception, while everyone danced under paper lanterns, I sat at a table near the bar, refilling my water glass. Megan's college roommate leaned over to another bridesmaid and said, loud enough for me to catch it, "Ryan's parents basically covered everything." Megan said they insisted. I set down my glass. Something cold and small turned over in my stomach. I didn't think about that sentence again. Not until 3 weeks later when I pulled the mail from the box before my father got home. Mid-June, a Thursday, I remember because the mailman came early and I was already on the porch, iced coffee in hand, waiting for my orientation packet from Michigan. There was no orientation packet, but there was a white envelope from Fidelity Investments. Quarterly statement addressed to Harold Townsend, care of Greg Townsend. Our address, I shouldn't have opened it. It wasn't addressed to me, but I'd spent 18 years being told that account was mine, so I tore the seal without thinking. Account owner, Harold R. Townsend. Beneficiary, Cora A. Townsend. Current balance, $0. I read it 3 times. Then I read the transaction history. Withdrawal March 14th, $21,743,862. Non-qualified distribution. Early withdrawal penalty assessed. $6,561.38. March 14th, 6 weeks before the Tuscany wedding. My hands weren't shaking. They were still dead, still like the rest of me. I called Fidelity from my bedroom with the door locked. A woman named Tricia confirmed everything. An authorized party initiated a full liquidation in March. "Ma'am, the penalty was applied because it wasn't used for qualified education expenses." Who authorized it? I can only confirm it was an authorized signer on the account. I hung up, sat on my bed, looked at the University of Michigan acceptance letter pinned to my corkboard, looked at the orientation packet I'd printed and stapled, already highlighted in 3 colors. Looked at the poster of the law quad I'd ordered online, the one with the Gothic arches and the autumn leaves. $224,000 gone. Moved in March, spent by May, and no one had said a word to me. It wasn't anger yet. It was the sound of a floor disappearing beneath your feet and discovering there's nothing underneath. I sat in my room that night and did what I always do when things fall apart. I did the math. University of Michigan in-state tuition, roughly $16,000 a semester, $32,000 a year. For years, $128,000 minimum. Add room, board, books, and fees, closer to $200,000 total. Federal student loans max out at $5,500 for freshmen. Even with a mix of subsidized and unsubsidized, I could maybe borrow $27,000 a year. But that left a gap the size of a small house. And it got worse. I'd already turned down 2 other schools, one with a $15,000 scholarship, one with a $12,000. Those offers were gone. Committed to Michigan, declined everywhere else. The deadlines had passed in April. Deferring a year meant losing my housing assignment, my orientation cohort, my momentum. It meant walking back into Shelby Township, the town where my guidance counselor threw me a mini party when I got accepted, and telling everyone I wasn't going. My savings account held $2,800, enough for maybe textbooks and a bus pass. I did one more calculation, the one that made my jaw tighten. If I took out $128,000 in student loans at 6.12% interest over 20 years, I'd pay back roughly $230,000, nearly the exact amount that had been stolen. Two paths. Swallow it, sign the loan papers. Spend the next 2 decades paying for my brother's Tuscan wine pairings or make a phone call. I picked up my phone, but I didn't call my grandparents. Not yet. I owed my parents chance to look me in the eye and explain. That was my mistake. I still believed they'd have an explanation. I brought the statement to dinner, set it on the table between the salt shaker and the casserole dish, face up. Can you explain this? Dad looked at it, then at me, then at Mom. The silence lasted long enough for the kitchen clock to tick 6 times. I counted. Cora, he cleared his throat. Ryan needed a strong start to his marriage. A man needs to provide for his wife. That was my money. It was family money. And Ryan is family. Mom put her fork down. Her eyes were already red. The way they get when she's gearing up for a performance. Why are you making this about money? We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. You gave me a promise and you broke it, sweetie. Her voice dropped to that soft, wounded register she reserves for when she wants you to feel guilty for having feelings. You can take loans like everyone else. Your cousin Jake took loans. He turned out fine. Cousin Jake didn't have a $200,000 fund stolen from him. Dad's palm hit the table. Not hard, just enough. This conversation is over. When you're older, you'll understand the decisions we made. I looked at him, looked at Mom, and I understood something with perfect, terrible clarity. They weren't sorry. They weren't confused. They'd made a choice. They'd chosen Ryan's wedding over my future, and they'd do it again. I stood up, picked up the statement, carried my plate to the sink, and washed it by hand because that's what I do in that house. I clean up. Mom called after me. Cora, don't be dramatic. I wasn't being dramatic. I was making a decision, but they wouldn't know that yet. The next morning, I woke up to 4 missed calls. Aunt Linda, Uncle Mike, Aunt Karen, and a text from my cousin Brooke. Heard things are tense over there. You okay? I called Aunt Linda back first. She picked up on the second ring. Cora, honey, your mother told me what happened at dinner last night. She said you threw a fit about money. Aunt Linda's voice had that careful pastoral tone. The one that says I've already picked a side, but I'm pretending I haven't. They took my college fund. Aunt Linda, they used family resources for your brother's wedding. There's a difference. Ryan just started a new chapter. You can't begrudge him that. It was $224,000. A pause then. Families make sacrifices, Cora, that's what we do. You're being a little materialistic, don't you think Uncle Mike was shorter? Your dad's under a lot of pressure. The wedding was expensive. Cut him some slack. You're 18. You've got your whole life to figure this out. Aunt Karen didn't even bring it up directly. She just said, your mother sounded really hurt. Maybe apologize. I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling. My mother had woken up that morning and called every relative in her phone. She told them her version. Cora threw a tantrum about money. Cora doesn't understand sacrifice. Cora is being ungrateful. Nobody asked where the money came from. Nobody asked whose name was on the account. Nobody asked whether $224,000 might matter to an 18-year-old about to start college. They didn't just take my money. They took my story. They told everyone their version first, and by the time I picked up the phone, the verdict was already in. That afternoon, Mom came into my room without knocking. She sat on the edge of my bed, smoothed the comforter with both hands, and used the voice, the gentle one, the one that sounds like a hug, but works like a vice. I know you're upset, sweetheart, and I understand, but you need to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture. Ryan's married now. He's starting a life. He needed that foundation. You're 18. You have time. Time doesn't pay tuition. She sighed. Long, slow, theatrical. Do you know how much your father and I sacrificed for that wedding? We didn't take a vacation in 2 years. I sold my bags. Your father gave up the fishing trip he's done every summer since before you were born. You sacrificed my savings, not yours. Her expression shifted. The warmth left her eyes like a pilot light clicking off. There you go again, my. When did you become so selfish, Cora? I just wanted both my kids to be happy. Is that so terrible? I said nothing. See, she stood. Even you know I'm right. She walked to the door, paused, then pulled out her phone and dialed someone right there in the hallway 3FT from my open door. She won't listen, Mom said to whoever picked up. I don't know what got into her. I tried talking to her. I really did. She just keeps saying, my money, it's embarrassing. I closed my door, sat down at my desk, opened the portal on my laptop, stared at the enrollment confirmation, and made a decision. I was done trying to convince people who would never see me. Not because I gave up on them, because I finally saw them clearly. Ryan FaceTimed me that evening. He was sitting in the new apartment, the one with the exposed brick accent wall Megan had picked out. She walked past in the background carrying a throw pillow. Look, I didn't ask them to use your fund. That was their call. But you knew. He shifted in his chair. I knew they were helping. I didn't know the specifics. You didn't ask. $150,000 for a wedding, and you never once asked where it was coming from. Cora, why are you trying to ruin this for me? I just got married. I'm not ruining anything. I'm asking where my future went. He ran a hand through his hair, the same gesture Dad uses when he's about to shut down a conversation. You always do this. You always make everything about you. I almost laughed. The kid who got the new bikes, the replaced cars, the funded wedding, telling me I make everything about myself. From somewhere off-screen, Megan's voice, casual and clear, just tell her to get over it. Everyone has student loans. Ryan glanced toward her, then back at me. She's right. You know loans aren't the end of the world. $230,000 in repayments over 20 years for a wedding I helped serve as a bridesmaid while I paid for my own flight. Cora, good night, Ryan. I hung up, set my phone face down on the desk. He'd said I knew they were helping. Not I didn't know. He knew. He knew money was flowing in his direction, and he chose not to ask where it originated because asking would have meant knowing and knowing would have meant owing. It's a convenient kind of ignorance, the kind that comes with Avila in Tuscany. The family group chat was called Towns and crew 17 members. My grandparents weren't on it. Grandpa Harold called group chats organized chaos and refused to join. That night, Dad posted a message. Just want to clear the air. The wedding was a family effort. We're all moving forward. Let's focus on positive things. Aunt Linda replied first. Agreed. Ryan and Megan looked so happy. Uncle Mike, family first always. Mom, so proud of our boy. Cousin Brooke posted a photo from the Tuscany reception. Megan tossing the bouquet, everyone laughing. 17 people in that chat. Not one mentioned college. Not one mentioned me. I scrolled through twice, slowly reading every name, every reaction emoji. Then I locked my phone and set it on the nightstand. My room was quiet. Summer night quiet. Crickets outside. A neighbor's sprinkler ticking across their lawn. The poster on my wall caught the street light through the blinds. The law quad arches looked silver in the dark. The orientation packet sat on my desk. I'd highlighted the moving checklist in 3 colors. Yellow for things I already had, green for things to buy, pink for things to borrow. 3 weeks away, 21 days. I had no money, no family support, and a group chat full of people who had just collectively decided my future wasn't worth a single line of text. I sat there a long time, long enough for the sprinkler next door to cycle off and on again. Then I picked up my phone, not to text the group chat, not to call Ryan, not to knock on my parents' door and try one more time. I dialed the only number that had never let me down. It rang twice then. Hey, sweetheart, it's late. Everything okay? Grandpa Harold answered the way he always does, steady voice, no rush, like he'd been waiting by the phone even though it was past 10 on a weeknight. Grandpa, I need to talk to you about my college fund. Sure thing. Everything on track for September. You get your housing assignment yet? He didn't know. 3 months after the withdrawal, phone calls from Dad on Sundays, and he had no idea. Grandpa, the fund is gone. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind where someone is listening so hard you can feel it through the phone. Say that again. Dad withdrew everything. In March, the balance is 0. How much was in it? $217,000 plus penalties. Another silence, longer this time. I heard the muffled sound of a baseball game on a television, then the click of it shutting off. When he spoke again, his voice was different. The grandfather was gone. The CPA was on line. "Cora, I need you to do something for me. Get that statement. Read me the account number and the exact date of the withdrawal." I read him every line. He didn't interrupt once. In the background, I heard Grandma Ruth. "Harold, what's wrong?" And then his reply, quick and flat. "Get me my laptop." He came back on that account. I opened that account. My name is on it. My name should still be on it as the owner. He was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, "Cora, listen to me. Don't call your father. Don't say anything to anyone in the family." "Can you do that?" "Yes, good. I need to check something. I'll call you tomorrow." "And sweetheart, yeah, we're going to fix this." He hung up. And for the first time in a week, I felt something other than hollow. Grandpa called back at 7 the next morning. He'd been up since 4. I logged into Fidelity, he said. No greeting, no preamble, pure accountant. Account owner Harold R. Townsend. Authorized signer Gregory M. Townsend. Added September 2011. Full liquidation on March 14th. Non-qualified distribution. Penalty and tax liability flagged. So Dad did it. He did it and he had no right to. That's my account, Cora. Being an authorized signer means you can execute transactions. It doesn't mean you own the money. Then his voice got quieter, not softer, sharper. "I started pulling records last night. Other accounts I've maintained. Transfers I've made to your father over the years. When he asked for help, I sat up in bed. What kind of help? In 2019, Greg told me Ryan needed $12,000 for a college tuition gap, but Ryan dropped out in 2018. Something cold moved through my chest. In 2021, he asked for $18,000 to replace the furnace at your house. I have the receipt for that furnace, Cora. I paid for it in 2017, Grandpa. In 2023, $22,000 for what he called Ryan's security deposit on a new apartment, except Ryan was living with Megan by then. He didn't sign a new lease that year. I checked. He paused. I could hear papers shuffling. Real paper, printed spreadsheets and bank records, the way Harold Townsend does things. Over 15 years, your father asked me for roughly $84,000 in supplemental funds. I can verify about $31,000 went where he said. The rest, $53,000, I can't account for. Grandma Ruth's voice came through the background, thin and strained. "Harold, what are you finding?" And my grandfather said one word that changed everything. A pattern. Over the next 3 days, Grandpa Harold did what Harold Townsend does. He built a case. He called his attorney, a semi-retired estate lawyer named Don Beckett, a man he'd played golf with for 30 years. Don confirmed what Grandpa already suspected. As the account owner of the 529, Harold had legal standing to pursue recovery. The withdrawal was unauthorized, non-qualified, and made without the account owner's knowledge. You could go civil, Don told him. You could also flag it with Fidelity directly. Either way, you've got grounds. Grandpa didn't want to sue his own son. He told me that on the phone plainly. "I'm not looking to destroy your father, Cora, but I won't let him destroy you." Grandma Ruth was the one who pushed it forward. I could hear her in the background during one of our calls, and her voice didn't waver. "A conversation is what got us here, Harold. Greg's had 20 years of conversations. He needs consequences." The 4th of July cookout had been on the Townsend calendar for months. Every year, the whole extended family gathered at Dad's house for burgers, fireworks, and family. Harold and Ruth usually skipped it because of the 3-hour drive. This year, they RSVP'd. "You're coming to the cookout, right?" Grandpa asked me. I wasn't planning on it. "Come bring your bank statement." The last thing he told me before hanging up. "I'm not going there to start a fight. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to bring the answers with me in case your father decides to lie." He drove 3 hours with a manila folder on the passenger seat, and that folder held more truth than my parents had told in 15 years. July 4th was 4 days away. Now I need to pause here because when my grandfather told me to bring that bank statement to the cookout, I almost said no. I thought maybe I should just quietly figure things out on my own. Have you ever had that moment where someone in your family finally steps up and you're not sure whether to trust it? Tell me in the comments. Have your grandparents ever been the ones to set things right? I'd really like to know. Okay, back to July 4th. July 4th, 92 degrees by noon. Dad had the grill going by 11. Smoke curling up past the American flag he'd zip-tied to the garage. Folding chairs lined the patio in a horseshoe. Coolers of beer and soda against the fence. The good plates, the plastic ones with stars on them. About 25 people showed. Aunt Linda brought her potato salad. Uncle Mike brought his wife and a case of Miller Lite. Cousins drifted in and out of the garage where someone had set up a cornhole board. Neighbors from 2 doors down came with sparklers for the kids. I arrived early, wore a sundress, carried the bank statement in my purse. Mom was in the kitchen arranging a fruit platter. She smiled at me, the public smile, the one she saves for when other people are watching. Cora, grab the napkins from the garage, will you? I grabbed the napkins. Outside, I watched her work the crowd, arm around Aunt Karen, laughing at Uncle Mike's joke. Then she found herself next to Mrs. Patterson from across the street and said loud and bright, "Both my kids are doing great. Ryan's married and Cora is heading to Michigan in the fall." She said it like it was still true, like the fund was still there, like nothing had happened. Ryan and Megan arrived around 1. Megan had printed photos from Tuscany, actual prints framed in white, and set them on the dessert table like trophies. Everyone crowded around. "Oh my God, the villa, look at that sunset." Megan beamed. I sat near the edge of the yard with a plate of corn and a glass of water. My phone buzzed. Text from Grandpa, 20 minutes out. Dad walked over and leaned in close. "Whatever you're thinking, don't ruin this. It's a family day." I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The dark blue truck pulled into the driveway at 1:30. Grandpa Harold stepped out first. Polo shirt, khaki pants, clean white sneakers. Under his left arm, a manila folder, not thick, maybe 15 pages. He tucked it close to his side like a hymnal. Grandma Ruth came around the passenger side. Sunglasses, silver earrings, the quiet posture of a retired school teacher who has seen every kind of misbehavior and is done being surprised by it. "Grandpa, Grandma," Cousin Brooke ran over for a hug. "You actually drove down." Aunt Linda waved from the patio. "Harold, Ruth, we didn't think you'd make it this year." Grandpa smiled, hugged Brooke, shook Uncle Mike's hand, accepted a plate with a burger and a scoop of pasta salad he didn't touch. Dad came over last. He extended his hand. "Didn't know you were coming." Dad wouldn't miss it. Their handshake lasted 2 seconds too long. I watched my father's eyes drop to the manila folder and come back up fast. Something moved across his face. Not guilt, not exactly. The expression of a man standing in a room with a smoke detector he forgot to disable. Grandpa hugged me, held my hand for a beat longer than usual. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Grandma Ruth greeted Mom with a hug and a smile. "So nice you drove all the way down, Ruth," Mom said. "We had something important to discuss." Mom's smile flickered, just a half-second fault line. Then she recovered. "Well, we're glad you're here. Burgers are almost done." Grandpa sat down at the picnic table in the center of the yard, set the manila folder on the table in front of him, didn't open it. The folder sat there like a clock nobody could hear except my father. Mom saw the danger. I'll give her that. Diane Townsend has a sixth sense for narrative slipping out of her control. 25 years of selling real estate teaches you to close before the buyer has second thoughts, so she struck first. Midway through the meal, she tapped her plastic fork against her cup of lemonade. The yard quieted. "I just want to say something," she began, voice warm, slightly trembling. "Just enough. Our family's been through a lot this summer, and I know there's been some tension." She turned to me, smile steady, eyes wet. Honey, I want to apologize in front of everyone for the misunderstanding about your college fund. We should have communicated better. That's on us." Aunt Linda murmured. "Oh, Diane," Mom pressed on, "but I want everyone to know everything your father and we did for this family. We did it for love." And Cora, she paused, let a tear roll. "You have your whole life ahead of you, sweetheart. Student loans are normal. We all make sacrifices." She turned to the crowd. "Right," nods around the yard. Aunt Karen dabbed her eye. Uncle Mike raised his beer slightly, a toast to the performance. Dad put his arm around Mom. Well said, honey. Ryan from his chair near Megan. We should just all move on. And just like that, my mother had turned theft into a Hallmark moment. She'd rewritten the story in real time, live in front of 25 witnesses. Cora's college fund wasn't stolen. It was shared. Cora wasn't wronged. She was ungrateful. Everyone was buying it. Everyone except the 72-year-old man with the folder. Grandpa Harold hadn't moved, hadn't clapped, hadn't nodded. He sat with both hands flat on the picnic table, watching his daughter-in-law with the expression of an auditor who just found the second set of books. 3 seconds of silence after Mom's speech. The yard waited for the moment to pass, the way you wait for a toast to finish so you can pick up your fork again. Then Grandpa Harold spoke. Diane, that was nice. His voice carried the way it always does, low level, the kind of voice that fills a room without getting louder. But I have some questions. He opened the folder. Nobody moved. I watched 25 faces shift from relaxed to alert, the way animals sense whether turning. Greg. He looked at my father. In March of this year, someone withdrew $217,000 from Cora's 529 education plan. The account I opened. The account in my name. He paused. Can you explain that? The yard went silent, dead silent. Somewhere down the block, someone's firework whistled and popped, ridiculous in the stillness. Dad's face went flat. Dad, this isn't the time or place. I'm asking a direct question. Did you or did you not withdraw funds from an account in my name without my authorization? Mom stepped in automatic. Harold, please. We just talked about communicating better. I am communicating. His eyes didn't leave my father. I'm asking my son why he took a $4 million from his 18-year-old daughter. Aunt Linda's fork hit her plate. Wait, that money was from you, Dad. Uncle Mike set down his beer slowly. Cousin Brooke pulled out her phone, then put it back, thought better of it. Megan whispered something to Ryan. Ryan didn't answer. His face had gone the color of the paper plates. Grandpa Harold kept the folder open, one page showing. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The folder was doing the talking now. Dad tried to recover. He straightened in his chair, gripped the edge of the table, and used the voice. The reasonable one, the insurance manager voice that makes you feel like you're the one being irrational. Dad, I was going to tell you the wedding costs got out of hand. Venues in Italy aren't cheap. I was going to pay it back. Pay it back. Grandpa's tone didn't change. With what? Dad didn't answer. Grandpa flipped to the next page. Let's talk about what else I found. He read the way he reads everything. Flat, factual, like a balance sheet. In 2019, you told me Ryan needed $12,000 for a college tuition gap. Ryan dropped out of Central Michigan in the spring of 2018. Dad's mouth opened, closed. In 2021, you asked for $18,000 to replace the furnace at your house. Grandpa pulled a sheet from the folder. Here's the invoice for your furnace installation. September 2017. I paid for that one, too. Aunt Linda stood, sat back down, stood again. Uncle Mike was staring at my father the way you stare at someone you thought you knew. In 2023, $22,000 for Ryan's security deposit on a new apartment. Grandpa looked up. Ryan was living with Megan by then. There was no new lease. Mrs. Patterson from across the street quietly picked up her purse and walked toward the side gate. 2 of the neighbor kids followed. They knew the way everyone knows. This wasn't a barbecue anymore. Dad stood. Dad, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Grandpa looked at him over the rim of his reading glasses. Sit down, Greg. My father sat. The yard held its breath, and I could hear the ice melting in 25 cups. Grandpa flipped to the last page. Total supplemental funds you requested from me over the past 15 years, citing various family needs, $84,600. He let the number settle. Someone coughed. Of that, I can verify approximately $31,000 went to the stated purposes. The remaining $53,000 I can't account for. He closed the page and looked up. And then in March of this year, $217,000 from Cora's education fund, unauthorized, non-qualified, with a penalty that tells me you knew exactly what you were doing when you pulled it. He set both hands on the folder. Total unaccounted redirections from my accounts over 15 years. Approximately $270,000. The number hung in the air like a flare. Aunt Linda turned to my father. "Greg, is this true?" Dad said nothing. He was staring at the table. Uncle Mike leaned back in his chair. "You told me you were tight on money. That's why I covered Mom's last 3 birthday trips by myself." One of the cousins, Derek, Uncle Mike's oldest, stood and walked to the driveway. I heard a car door open and close. He'd had enough. Grandma Ruth spoke for the first time. "How much of this went Ryan?" Dad's jaw worked. "Ryan is my son. I have a right to help. You have 2 grandchildren at this table, Greg." Her voice could have cut through the grill's smoke. 2. Mom hadn't spoken since Grandpa opened the folder. She sat very still, hands in her lap, staring at my father with an expression I'd never seen on her face. It wasn't anger at me this time. It wasn't performance. She was looking at her husband the way you look at a stranger wearing a familiar face. Then Mom spoke and every head turned. "Greg," her voice was flat, stripped. "You told me the wedding cost $85,000. You said your savings and the fund covered it. You never mentioned penalties. You never mentioned any of this." Dad turned to her. "Diane, not now. The $53,000, the money your father can't account for. Where did it go? Those were family expenses. Things came up over the years. You told me the $22,000 in 2023 was a bonus from work that you reinvested." Grandpa lifted an eyebrow. "That was my money, Diane. Given to your husband because he told me the family needed it." The color drained from my mother's face slowly, like watching a tide pull back. I'd grown up watching Diane Townsend perform emotions the way other people perform card tricks. The tears on cue, the wounded sighs, the strategic vulnerability. This wasn't a performance. This was a woman realizing she'd been managed by the same tactics she used on everyone else. She knew about the college fund. She was part of that decision, and I don't forget that. But the 15 years of phantom expenses, the fabricated requests to Grandpa, that was Greg operating solo, and she was only now seeing the ledger. 25 years, she said, not to anyone, just into the space between them. 25 years and I find out our finances are a lie at a barbecue. Dad reached for her arm. "Diane," she pulled away, not dramatically, just enough. "The way you move from something that used to be warm and isn't anymore." Ryan sat frozen in his chair. Megan had her arms crossed, staring at him the way a prosecutor watches a key witness falter. And I sat at the end of the table, the bank statement in my purse. I hadn't said a word since we sat down. It didn't need to. The numbers were doing it for me. Ryan broke. "Why is everyone looking at me?" "I didn't do anything." Grandpa turned to him, same measured tone. "Ryan, were you aware your parents used Cora's college fund to pay for your wedding?" Ryan looked at Dad. Dad looked at the table. I knew they were contributing. I didn't know the specifics. Megan uncrossed her arms. "You told me your parents offered their own money." "They did." "Their money, Ryan, not your little sister's college fund, babe. I didn't know the details. I swear. $150,000. Megan's voice went very quiet. The kind of quiet that's louder than shouting. "And you didn't think to ask where it came from." He didn't answer. Megan stood, picked up her purse from the back of her chair, looked at my father, then at my mother, then at Ryan. "What else don't I know?" Ryan reached for her hand. "Megan, come on. This is crazy." She walked inside. The screen door banged shut behind her. Ryan looked around the yard once at Grandpa, at Mom, at Uncle Mike, at me, and then followed her in. The table went quiet. Aunt Linda pressed both palms to her cheeks. Uncle Mike's wife pulled out her phone to text someone, then thought better of it and put it away. Cousin Brooke mouthed something to Cousin Derrick's wife across the table. I couldn't read it, but I could guess. I hadn't said a single word since the folder opened. I didn't need to. My grandfather had brought the numbers, and numbers don't argue. They don't cry. They don't reframe. They just sit there on a picnic table in July and tell the truth. Grandpa Harold stood slowly. The way he does everything. Deliberate, unhurried, like a man who spent 50 years making sure every column adds up before he signs off. "I want to be clear." He looked around the table, every face one by one. "I didn't come here to punish anyone. I came because my granddaughter called me 3 weeks before college and told me she had nothing. 0 because my son took what I gave her. He picked up the folder, held it at his side. I opened that 529 plan when Ka was 1 day old. I contributed every year for 18 years. I watched it grow. That money was for one thing and one person. He turned to Dad. Dad didn't look up. You didn't just steal from Cora, Greg. You stole from me. And then you lied about it for 15 years. Grandma Ruth stood next to me. She put her hand on my shoulder. Firm, warm, the kind of touch that says I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. Grandpa continued. I'll be working with my attorney on the financial recovery. The details don't belong in this yard. But as for Cora's education, he looked at me. Ruth and I will make sure she gets to Michigan. That's not up for discussion. He closed the folder, tucked it under his arm. Finished. The yard was so quiet I could hear the neighbor's flag snapping in the breeze 2 houses down. I spoke for the first time. Thank you, Grandpa. He looked at me and his face softened just for a moment. From CPA back to grandfather. You shouldn't have had to make that call, sweetheart. That's on us too. Then he turned and walked to the cooler, picked up a bottle of water, unscrewed the cap. It was over. I have to be honest, standing in that backyard, hearing my grandfather say those words, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Like someone finally saw me. Not as the quiet kid, not as the one who would figure it out, just as someone worth fighting for. If this story is hitting close to home, you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me who was your person, the one who showed up when nobody else did. Let's keep going. The cookout ended the way a party ends after a pipe bursts quickly and without goodbyes. Aunt Karen was the first to leave, hugged me at the gate, didn't say anything. Uncle Mike shook Grandpa's hand on the way to his truck. You did the right thing, Dad, Grandpa nodded. Aunt Linda found me near the garage while I was folding chairs. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. I'm sorry I called you materialistic, she said. I didn't have the full picture. Most people didn't, I said. She pulled me into a hug that lasted 3 seconds longer than her usual side squeeze. Then she left. The neighbors had slipped out during Grandpa's speech. Mrs. Patterson and her husband, the couple with the sparklers, professional exit, small town instinct. This isn't our business, but we'll remember every word. Through the kitchen window, I could see Ryan and Megan in his parked car. 20 minutes they sat there. Megan talked. Ryan listened, or at least faced her direction. At one point, she pressed both palms against the dashboard and stared straight ahead. And I looked away. Dad sat at the picnic table alone, untouched burger on his plate. The empty folder spot in front of him. He didn't move when people left, didn't wave, didn't stand. Mom had gone inside. I heard the master bedroom door close. Then the lock. Grandma Ruth and I cleared the food, covered the pasta salad, rinsed the serving spoons, folded the tablecloth. Normal things. The kind of things you do with your hands when the rest of you hasn't caught up yet. Before they left, Grandpa pulled me aside by the truck. We're going to sort this out financially and legally. You focus on Michigan. I nodded. Focus on Michigan, he said again, like he needed me to hear it twice. The following week, Grandpa met with Don Beckett at his lake house in Traverse City. Don had handled estates and trusts for 40 years. He laid out 3 options over coffee and legal pads. Option 1, civil claim. Unauthorized withdrawal from a custodial education account by an authorized signer who exceeded his scope. Clear-cut on paper, mesh in practice. It would mean suing Greg. Option 2, report directly to Fidelity. Flag the withdrawal as unauthorized by the account owner. Trigger an internal investigation. Option 3, the IRS angle. Non-qualified withdrawals carry federal income tax plus a 10% penalty. Greg had pulled $217,000 out of a tax-advantaged account for a non-education expense. The tax bill alone would be 5 figures. Grandpa chose options 1 and 2. Report to Fidelity, file the civil claim, and hold the IRS card in reserve, not as a weapon, but as leverage if Greg tried to stonewall. Fidelity froze the account within 72 hours and opened a formal review. Don drafted a letter certified mail return receipt address to Gregory M. Townsend. The letter requested full restitution of $21,743,862, plus the $6,561.38 in penalties payable over a 5-year period, or Harold would proceed with litigation. The same week, Grandpa opened a brand new 529 plan for me. Account owner Harold R. Townsend, beneficiary Cora A. Townsend, no authorized signers. He transferred $60,000 from his retirement savings to cover first-year costs at Michigan. When I protested, he stopped me. I should have checked on that account years ago. I trusted your father instead of verifying that mistake is mine. 2 days later, Dad received the certified letter. He called Grandpa that night. "You're really going to sue your own son?" Grandpa's answer was the last thing Dad expected. "You really stole from your own daughter. Mom found the letter before Dad could hide it. She told me this later, months later, when things between us had thawed enough for that kind of conversation. She'd been bringing in the mail and saw the attorney's name on the return address. She read every line. Then she walked into the kitchen where Dad was eating cereal and set it in front of him. How much more is there that I don't know? It's my father overreacting the $53,000. Greg, where did it go? He didn't answer. Did Ryan know about all of it? Some. She repeated the word some, and then she laughed. Not the way you laugh at something funny. The way you laugh when the punchline is your whole life. 25 years. And I find out our finances are a lie at a barbecue. She moved into the guest room that night. I know because I was still living in the house, awkwardly, unavoidably, counting the days until August moving. I heard Harolding the suitcase down the hall at 11 p.m. I heard Dad's voice through the door. "Deanne, be reasonable." I heard nothing back. The next morning, Mom was on the phone in the guest room. I caught a fragment through the wall. "What's the market like for 2 bedrooms right now?" Dad called me the following evening. I was in my room packing. "Are you happy now? You've destroyed this family." I set down the stack of t-shirts I'd been folding. I made a phone call. "Dad, you made the choices." He hung up. I went back to packing. Jeans, socks, the quilt Grandma Ruth made me when I was 12. The orientation packet highlighted in 3 colors. 21 days had become 6. Ryan called Dad 2 days later. I heard the conversation from the hallway, not because I was eavesdropping, but because Dad had stopped bothering to close his office door. The house had that hollow, half-abandoned feel. Nobody was performing for anyone anymore. "Dad, what about the money you promised?" "The first-year fund, the anniversary trip you said you'd help with." Dad's voice was flat, emptied out. "Son, I can't right now. Your grandfather froze everything. There's a legal claim pending." "What do you mean froze everything?" "I mean I'm about to owe your grandfather $224,000. I don't have extra." Silence on Ryan's end long enough that I thought the call dropped. "Then you told me you had this handled." "I did have it handled." "No, Dad. You had it hidden." It was the first time I'd heard Ryan push back on our father. The first time in 26 years he'd questioned the arrangement. Because for the first time, the arrangement cost him something. Through the wall, I heard one more fragment of the call. Megan's voice in Ryan's background, sharp and clipped. "Ask him about the penalties. Ask him who's paying the tax bill." That evening, Ryan sent me a text. The first message since our FaceTime call weeks earlier. "I had no idea it was this bad. I'm sorry." 5 words, no details, no offer to help, no acknowledgement of the villa, the string quartet, the 7-course dinner, the 120 guests who toasted his future with money pulled from mine. I read it. I didn't reply. His apology was 5 words on a screen. My grandfather's was a new 529 plan and a 3-hour drive with a manila folder. I knew which one meant something. Shelby Township is the kind of town where news travels on foot. You don't need social media when you have church parking lots and grocery store checkout lines. Within a week of the cookout, the story had spread. Not from me, not from Grandpa, but from the 25 people who were standing in the yard when the folder opened. Mrs. Patterson told her book club. Uncle Mike's wife told her sister, who told the PTA chair, who told half of Cent. Andrew's Lutheran. Dad felt it at work first. His regional manager pulled him into the office on a Tuesday. Insurance companies are particular about financial integrity. It's the one industry where personal money trouble becomes professional liability. I'm hearing some things about a family financial situation. Greg, is there anything I need to be aware of? Dad told me later, much later, that he said no. But the question had been asked, and in that industry, the question is the answer. Mom's real estate network thinned. A client who'd been house hunting in Rochester Hills asked to be reassigned. I'd prefer an agent whose family finances are in order. The woman apparently said, "Mom didn't tell me that story." Aunt Linda did. At church, Pastor Jim called Dad to suggest a conversation. Dad declined. Ryan and Megan's world shifted, too. Megan's parents, the Presleys, retired teachers from Grand Rapids, called Megan after hearing a version of events from Megan's aunt, who knew Aunt Linda from a garden club. "Did you know the wedding was paid for with stolen money?" Megan's mother asked. Megan's answer, "I didn't, and I'm still processing." The silence from the extended family was the loudest part. Aunt Linda stopped calling Dad. Uncle Mike didn't text. The group chat, Towns and crew went dormant. No messages, no emojis, just a long, flat quiet. Mom filed for legal separation the first week of August. I was packing the last of my boxes when she knocked on my door. A real knock this time, not the barge gin from June. She stood in the doorway, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked 10 years different from the woman who delivered that speech at the cookout. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Not the one I gave in the yard, a real one." It put down the roll of packing tape. I knew about the wedding fund. I should have stopped it. I told myself it would work out, that you'd get loans, that it would be fine, that your father knew what he was doing. She paused. But the other money, the 15 years, I didn't know. And the fact that I didn't know scares me more than anything. I appreciate you saying that, Mom. I know it's not enough. It's a start. She looked at the half-packed room, the bare walls where my posters had been, the stripped bed, the bookshelf I'd emptied into cardboard boxes. "Can I help you pack?" I should have said no. Part of me wanted to, but she was standing there with her hands at her sides, asking, not telling, not performing, not pivoting to make it about her feelings, just asking. Okay. We packed together for 2 hours. She folded clothes while I wrapped picture frames. We didn't talk much. She handed me the quilt Grandma Ruth made, and I tucked it into the suitcase without comment. She taped a box chute and wrote books heavy on the side in her careful handwriting. It was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than the silence I'd been living in all summer. This one had something growing in it. "I spent so long making Ryan shine," she said as she taped the last box. "I forgot to look at you. Move-in day. Mid-August. Grandpa and Grandma Ruth drove down from Traverse City at dawn." The truck bed had 2 suitcases, 4 boxes, a desk lamp from their attic, and a bag of groceries. Grandma insisted on granola bars, ramen packets, and a jar of the raspberry jam she makes every summer. "No college student should start without real jam," she said, setting it on the shelf above my mini fridge. My dorm was in South Quad, a double room with a window that faced the diag. The walls were cinder block. The mattress was thin. The communal bathroom was down the hall. It was the most beautiful room I'd ever seen. Grandpa carried the heavy boxes up 2 flights of stairs without complaining. He's 72. He stopped on Thelending once to catch his breath, and Grandma pretended not to notice. We made the bed together. Grandma smoothed the quilt she'd made, the one from when I was 12, now faded at the corners, and stepped back to look at it. "Fits perfect," she said. I pinned the poster on the wall, the Law Quad arches. Same poster from my bedroom at home, now 3 hours and a different life away. Grandpa sat on the edge of the desk chair. "First semester's covered. We'll work out the rest year by year. Focus on your classes. I'm getting a campus job, too. The library is hearing, that's my girl." Grandma Ruth hugged me at the door. "Call us any time, day or night. We mean it." I walked them to the truck. Grandpa turned the key, then stopped, picked up his phone, dialed. "Your daughter is at Michigan," he said into the phone. "No thanks to you." He hung up and pulled out of the lot. I went back to my room, sat on the bed, looked out the window at the oaks turning green gold in the August light. I smiled. That first real one since June. By October, the dust had settled into hard facts, the kind you can count. Dad agreed to a restitution plan. $224,000 repaid to Grandpa Harold over 7 years, structured by the attorneys, monthly installments. To afford it, he sold the boat that had sat in the side yard for 3 summers, downgraded his truck to a used Camry. The IRS penalty and taxes on the non-qualified withdrawal north of $20,000 when the accountants were done hit his credit report like a sledgehammer. His regional manager didn't fire him, but the promotion to district that Dad had been angling for quietly disappeared. 2 months later, they moved him from branch manager to senior agent. Same office, smaller title. No one said it was related. Everyone knew. Mom's separation became a divorce filing in late September. She took a full-time position at a competing real estate firm in Sterling Heights. New town, new office, new business cards. She called me every Sunday. We talked about classes, weather, cafeteria, food, small things, Safa things. She was trying. I could feel it. Ryan and Megan hit a wall of their own. Megan's parents, the Presleys, pulled back their offer to help with a future down payment. We didn't sign up to support a family built on fraud. Megan's father reportedly told her Ryan, for the first time in his life, was staring at bills without a safety net. His dealership salary covered rent barely. The anniversary trip to Napa was canceled. Grandpa Harold opened the new 529 and funded it enough to cover all 4 years at Michigan in state. Account owner, Harold R. Townsend. Beneficiary, Cora A. Townsend. Authorized signers, none. This time, he said, it's just you and me on the paperwork. And me, first semester, GPA 3.7, campus job at the Shapiro Library, shelving books 3 nights a week. I was doing okay, more than okay. I was there. Thanksgiving break, I didn't go to Shelby Township. I went to Traverse City. Grandpa met me at the door with a bear hug and the smell of Ruth's turkey already filling the house. There was a fire in the wood stove and a puzzle half finished on the dining table. 1,000-piece of match and bridge. Dad called the week before. It's still your home, Cora. You're welcome here. I'll see you at Christmas, Dad, but I need you to understand something. I'm not angry anymore. I just need to trust you again. And that's going to take time. How much time, that depends on you. He was quiet for a while. I heard the sound of a television in the background. A house where someone lives alone now and leaves the TV on for company. Okay, he said. Okay. The new rules weren't dramatic. They weren't announced in a speech. I just drew them quietly the way you draw a line in the dirt with your shoe. No more financial anything through Dad. Tuition, savings, any family money all through Grandpa. Clean line. Mom and I were rebuilding slowly. She called on Sundays. Sometimes we talked for 5 minutes, sometimes 40. She never brought up the cookout. Neither did I. There was an unspoken agreement. Forward, not backward. Ryan sent a birthday card in November. It arrived at my dorm with a Hallmark generic message and his signature. I texted back, thanks, that was all. At Thanksgiving dinner, Grandma Ruth said, Grace. She thanked God for the food, for the family at the table, and for granddaughters who know their worth. Grandpa caught my eye across the table and winked. I stabbed a piece of turkey and decided that was enough closure, enough for now. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip, it's a road you walk, and I get to choose the pace. People ask me if I regret making that phone call. The answer is no, not because of what it did to my parents' marriage. I didn't want that. I picked up the phone because I wanted to go to college, not because I wanted to tear my family apart. The tearing happened on its own because the fabric was already rotten. It just needed someone to pull the thread. My grandfather taught me something that summer. Something I carry in my back pocket like a worn dollar bill. The truth doesn't need volume. It just needs daylight. He didn't shout in that backyard. He didn't accuse. He opened a folder and read numbers, and the numbers did the rest. My mother and I are working on it. Some weeks are better than others. She sends me articles about pre-law programs and asks if I've been eating enough vegetables. It's imperfect and sometimes awkward. She's trying, I can see it, and that counts. My father pays his restitution on the first free month. He calls on holidays. We talk about Michigan football and whether it's going to snow, surface things, comfortable distance. For now, that's enough. Ryan and I exist in each other's orbit the way distant planets do. Aware, but not close. He sent me a Christmas gift that year, a gift card to a bookstore. $50, I used it. I didn't call to say thank you, but I didn't throw it away either. Progress is a strange, uneven thing. And Grandpa Harold, he drives down once a semester to take me to lunch. We go to a diner near campus where they serve all-day breakfast. He orders the same thing every time. 2 eggs, wheat toast, black coffee. We talk about my classes, my grades, my plans. He always asks the same question before he leaves. You good, kiddo? Yeah, Grandpa, I'm good. If you're listening to this somewhere right now, in your car, in your kitchen at 2 a.m. with the lights off, and something in this story felt familiar, I want to say one thing. You don't have to be loud to be heard. I didn't scream at my parents. I didn't throw furniture. I didn't post a take on social media or hire a skywriter. I asked one question at a dinner table. And when nobody answered it honestly, I called the one person I trusted to care about the truth more than the comfort of pretending. That's all it took. One phone call. One person who showed up with facts instead of excuses. If you're the quiet one in your family, the one who clears the table. The one who doesn't ask for much. The one everybody assumes will figure it out. Hear me. Your silence is not consent. Your patience is not permission. And your future is not a line item in someone else's budget. My college fund wasn't just money. It was a promise. It was 18 years of birthday cards that said 1 year closer to your launch pad. When my parents broke that promise, they thought the story was over. They thought I'd take the loans, swallow the injustice, and show up at Christmas like nothing happened. They forgot something. It wasn't their story to end. It was mine, and I'm still writing it. I'm sitting in my dorm right now. Second semester campus, job at the library. Pre-law track. 3.7 GPA. There's a poster of the law quad on my wall. Same one I've had since senior year of high school. The corners are bent, the tape is peeling, but it's still there, and so am I. Thank you for staying with me through this whole story. It means more than you know. If it resonated with you, if you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you love, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories like this one coming. And if you want to hear what happened with Ryan and Megan a year later, I'll save that for the next one. Drop a comment. Would you have made that call or would you have let it go? I genuinely want to know. And check the description. There's a story in there that hit just as hard. I'll see you there.